all the ones that were in the lobby.
Okay. Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in just a moment. All right. Okay, welcome. Friday at 3 o'clock. Who thought of this time? I hope you all can hear me. Welcome, come in. We're on the Teams platform, so if you could mute yourself during the presentation. We are recording so we can upload to the website, and I know I've had a lot of people ask about that, and we can typically turn these around in a week or two. As long as we make them accessible and we make sure all the transcripts say what we intend for them to say. So today is March 4th, and this is our just quarterly report on some of the things that are happening with the Office of Special Ed Programs, and what's also happening in terms of some of our state activities. If you do have questions or comments, you can put them in the chat. We won't address them as part of the recording, but I'm happy to take a look at them, or you can email me directly for more information or for clarification. So that's what you can expect. These State of the States typically run from 30 minutes to an hour. I think we're more on the 30-minute side today, but we will see. And I hope that you find this information useful. So I'll put on my super glasses and get ready to go. As always, we have members of the public who also tune into the State of the States or look at the recordings. And I love to highlight the different members of the Agency of Education that work on special education initiatives. So this involves, 12 members of our core team and some of our extended team members. Wanted to mention also that Linda Moreno, who was previously a member of the data division in the area of assessment, has joined the special education team full time, and she will continue her alternate assessment work. As well as more engagement with indicator 3, which is our achievement indicator, and also some of our efforts towards addressing the success gap that we have with students with and students without disabilities with respect to student achievement. And Linda also brings her strengths and interests around English language learners and ELL population with IEPs and being able to get some guidance and resources out to you. But everybody here, we work collaboratively together, problem solve on a frequent basis, and we just constantly work together towards the priorities, which I'll outline in just a moment. So I am Jacqui Kelleher, State Director of Special Education. This is part of the responsibilities that have been outlined by Office of Special Ed Programs and the National Association of State Directors of Special Ed as some of the primary functions of a state director. So there's much more than looking at the compliance aspects of state and federal requirements. It's about continuous improvement. And these are 5 particular areas that all of our team works to map onto. This year, we're looking very closely at what's written as closing the achievement gap, but we've been talking more about this as addressing the success gap as we've been exploring and doing deeper dives into data that show, across the grade levels, the disparity with students with and students without disability and their performance on measures such as the SBAC and the NAEP and other achievement measures that we have in the state. So all of these are important. I know another one that's bolded here that we are seeking to partner with our local education agencies, our districts, as well as community partners in higher education and folks in labor, and that's qualified workforce at state and local levels. I know that's something that's very much on everybody's mind. 2020, 2021, 2022, some of the forecasts that folks have shared with us. It's just it's long-term planning, absolutely, but what are some of the short-term supports that we can provide? What kind of creativity and innovation can we bring to the table to look at how we are addressing our vacancies? And so that's very much on all of our minds as a priority for long-term and short-term. Our vision statement that we have with our overall agency of ed, the purpose statement about what our mission is with respect to leadership, support, and oversight of Vermont's public education system. Our special ed team has, been thoughtful in the past 2 years about coming up with its own particular vision that involves taking our work and ensuring that community partners, interested parties, those that have, an investment in special education, are able to provide feedback and insights over the work that we do. And that ultimately together, as we collaborate with these folks, that we are ensuring access, opportunity, and equity, and ultimately improving outcomes for children and youth with disabilities. So building capacity and improving outcomes is very much a part of our mission, of our vision. So a few federal updates. There hasn't been a lot of information since we last met in December, but I'm just wanting to highlight some of the things that have come our way that might inform your practice. The first one of the new pieces of information since January is that the Office of Special Ed Programs has identified and put in place a new director, and that is Valerie Williams. For those of you who have been a part or have followed the National Association of State Directors of Special Ed, or NASD, will know Valerie from her work in policy. Valerie's got a wealth of information around teaching and learning, and the policy work was brought so much information and insights to the NASD organization, and she was a strong advocate for special education directors, state directors, for kids, and so she has been in office since January. And we're I'm very excited that she is directing this effort. And I can tell you that, in some of the communications that she has put out has been really thoughtful, meaningful, visionary statements about plans that she has for directing the Office of Special Ed Programs. So we're really encouraged by that. Announcing the timely submission of our state performance plan annual performance reports was submitted to OSEP February 1st, 2022. From now until April, OSEP does an initial review. OSEP contacts us the last 2 weeks of April, and we have the opportunity as a state to respond to their questions or to provide clarifications in any areas. That is called the clarification period. From there, OSEP uses its scoring rubric, and all of our data gets translated into a state, an SEA determination, which is issued near the third week of June of 2022. So we will keep you posted through special ed directors calls. We will announce to the state the type of information, feedback, that status as soon as we receive that. But again, thanks everybody for getting your data in a timely and accurate way this year. We were actually able to submit our documentation early as a result of everybody's efforts. Here are some of the resources that OSIP has shared since December 2021. The link to this website, and again, the slide deck will be made available along with the recording. The Keeping the Promise section has to do with education and Afghan resettlement. And there are educational materials, student and family engagement resources, and fact sheets, and general cultural and linguistic facts to help guide teachers, SEAs, LEAs, IHEs, other community-based education providers to be able to educate and support as we welcome our allies into our school communities and within our state. These are some of the other resources that have been made available to us. The COVID-19 resource, we have been, as a state, messaging out as there are different or new guidance and information that comes out. We've been doing that either through the state or the special ed directors calls every other Monday, but we've also been disseminating through the nuggets. And we disseminate on our Agency of Ed Special Ed website, any of those updates. But the COVID-19 website is still open. And there is nothing new to report, but OSIP is still messaging this as a resource that we should have at the ready. OSIP does fast facts, whether it's a particular topic or trend or particular disability category. There are opportunities to look at national data and our own state data. And recently they have released information on race and ethnicity of children with disabilities that have been disaggregated by states. And they offer a hand-in-hand supplement to Fast Facts, which is, okay, great, here are your data. Now, how can we use them at the SCA level or as part of our LEA initiatives? And so the supplement guide is, provides some tools of how to work with the data and how to understand definition and terms and how to incorporate it into program planning and systems change work. So that's something that's available to you. I just wanted to highlight that this is the current topic that was recently published. Some other organizations and centers that OSIP is encouraging us to refer to include the National Center on Special Education Research that is dedicated to evidence-based practices, evidence-based intervention, attrition, recruitment, retention, all things special education. Those organizations or institutions that are receiving federal support for their research, it's an opportunity for them to publish for the public consumption the findings of all this research that's going on in our field. And it is a full array of everything involving special education, teaching, learning, assessment practices, and is just another place to get current work in progress and some of the latest cutting edge approaches to teaching and learning in our field. For COVID-19 and for ongoing, issues related to the pandemic that we've been experiencing, the National Center for Systemic Improvement is the primary source for technical assistance resources. NCSI does work with states. Vermont participates in many NCSI engagement activities, from evidence-based practices, results-based accountability, low performance of school systems, and it also has a robust technical assistance support for state directors. And they continue to also provide LEA specific resources. And so OSIP has said they're our go-to for Part B programs, and that's ages 3 through 21. We also have the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center, primary source for IDEA Part C programs, but also kind of like bridges over with early childhood special education. But ECTA has been, identified as the go-to for early learning for students with disabilities. National Center on Deaf Blindness has updated its resources list with some additional innovative practices and checklist tools and a support system. OSIP has also, for those of you who are really interested in the state performance plan and the APR and ways to use your data, they have recently released a booklet with different tips and essential questions and some, guiding documents about how do we understand and utilize our data. It's something that we're incorporating in as part of our improvement activities across those indicators, and we'll be sure to identify this booklet as a resource as we move forward with our technical assistance specific to those indicators. Two other resources to highlight: DMS 2.0, so differentiated monitoring system. Just as the Agency of Education monitors LEAs on cyclic, selective, and targeting levels, OSIP does the same for states. Currently, it has OSIP has states in a cohort basis or cohort formation, and they are currently working with cohort 1 and cohort 2 for their monitoring. And the DMS 2.0 is a set of protocol that OSIP has provided to states. It's essentially the study guide for the on-site visit and all of the questions, all of the evidence that OSIP wants to see either pre-visit or during the visit or as a follow-up visit. In Vermont, we have been working for the past 18 months to prepare ourselves for a visit that we don't anticipate for another 2 years. But we have been using an older tool called the Critical Review Elements Analysis Guide, or CREG. We've been using that to do a gap in frequency analysis of the evidence that we have to show that we are meeting particular requirements. Not only the evidence showing that we do, but the processes that we have to ensure that we do. And we're using these DMS 2.0 resources, and we're transferring over all of our CREG findings into these new tools that were released this past fall. So, if folks are interested in, how as a state, the expectation that OSIP has on performance around all of the characteristics of general supervision, this is where you can locate them. And we also have them available within the agency. This is something that you can reach out and utilize. So we'll have more to share about these resources, but they're very, very informative. They're much more reflective in nature compared to the past inventory that we used. And the type of evidence that they're going to require involve what they expect to see collected at the LEA level. So for those who are listening who are part of districts, that might be of interest to you. And it also allows us to show you why we are asking for certain things, because many of these things are what OSIP is telling us that they expect to see us collecting. So I think it just makes the whole monitoring process much more transparent. And how as a state, we are going to ultimately be evaluated when OSIP does its visit. We understand that as I projected a 2-year out visit, OSIP does start working with states about 6 months in advance of a visit, but we are going to be well positioned to have all of our information ready. So there is no scrambling, there's no surprises, and this is just ultimately going to strengthen our work as a state with respect to improving outcomes for children and youth. And then NCSI has created some documents and tools for districts that are looking at equity, that are looking at systems of coherence, how we embed equity across all of the work that we do. And so this was also recently released. And for those of you who have been already, looking at strengthening your systems around equity, access, and opportunity, this might be a tool that helps support some of your systems work in this area. And just a couple of more. Progress is another national technical assistance provider funded by OSIP dollars. And they have podcasts that cover hot topics in educations by educators. Your educators are the hosts. They bring in problems of practice. It's not unique to special education only, but as we all know, special education students are general ed students first. And I think they're putting some of the problems of practice that are out there and having, an engaging dialogue by practitioners about how they are approaching particular scenarios and situations that are nationally we're struggling with. So that's another good resource to follow. And then there's an observational tool for systemic observations for instructional supports and systems that OSIP has also highlighted. We used part of this work to help frame the systemic observation tool that we have included as part of the specific learning disability professional development technical assistance package we've done around SLD and identification. So I wanted you to have like the root of, where we framed some of our thinking, came from this OSIP supported document. And then looking at qualified workforce, OSIP has an entire section on attract, recruit, and retain within the federal web pages. And they have recently provided this diversifying the teaching field webinar packages. And so this is something else that has some incredible expertise, some incredible innovative thinking and strategies for diversifying the teaching field, and something that we're looking at too, and just wanted you to be aware of it as well as you consider ways to attract and retain. So we have some state activities, and this is the time I like to highlight some of the work that's going on. And knowing that everything is a work in progress, and this certainly is not an exhaustive list, it's just some highlights. And I will move forward. In addition to the SPP APR report that was submitted on time in February 1st, thanks to the work of the community partners, such as everybody listening here, we were able to submit some really reasonable yet robust targets across those 17 different indicators. We had input from many folks across the state. We had teachers, we had parents, families, administrators, concerned citizens. We engaged quite often with the special ed advisory panel and went indicator by indicator. And we were able to collect some great data of recommendations from people, whether it was recommending a particular number we should set as a target or a particular range. We previously with SPP APR, we looked at it from 6 years ago. It was difficult on some targets to understand why things were set the way they were, or why there was a particular direction going. We have moving forward a 6-year plan that is so grounded in data with feedback from stakeholders that we're really excited that we have a real strategic pathway over the next 6 years. The great news about how OSIP is addressing targets this time around is that we can go back and make changes. If we overshot a target, or we went, man, we're making progress much more quickly or more effectively than we anticipated, they're giving us, until that year 6 of the plan, they're giving us time to go back and make changes. We're committed to not making those changes in isolation, but bringing those to our community partners to get feedback on. But just in all, thanks to the public response, we were able to propose a strong target model to the Secretary of Education, who agreed with the targets that were set, and they're now in place. And this continues to drive the work, but the work feels so much more connected to the true measures that the public expects to see. We'll continue to reach out to our districts as those targets do indeed, comprise the local special education determinations. It impacts your own local determination status. So the dialogue is just beginning. It's not one and done now that it was submitted, but that was well over 12 months of real intensive digging deep into historical data, getting perspectives from so many different representatives, and was very much a collaborative effort and was not done in isolation. So kudos to all the folks that engaged in this work. We, as those of you who are listening, especially if you are a district, you're very much aware that we have the rule change, technical assistance, professional development website with rule changes that consist of all of the special education programmatic rule changes that are underway. And we've been working in collaboration, we being the special education team, has been working in collaboration with our early childhood special education team, finance, Vermont MTSS, early MTSS, and as well as there is an internal Act 173 work group. And so as we have moved from September to the present with rolling out guidance about the rule changes, these are some of the folks internally that have been involved in the collaboration. And it's really been strengthening our own ability to look at the intersectionality between special education and the different systems work that's underway across those areas. And our job is to be able to align this work and create alignment. It's definitely been an intense process, and we've had also a lot of field feedback on the various guidance documents that we have put out. What you can expect to see in the coming months is as follows. Any type of clarification that needed to be made, or checklists or tools that needed to be updated in response to your questions. We are revising those documents. We will have another live session in a few weeks to talk about some of the changes that we are making. And I don't want to say changes in a way that's going to be scary, but these were great things. Like, can we have clarity on what do you mean by how long after the IEP does a parent have to provide parent input, for an example? We recognize it wasn't very clear. So that's an example of something that will be clarified in the coming months. Further, we had over 57 respondents to our needs assessment survey that we did over the past couple of weeks that asked questions about what needs further clarification, what changes, what barriers do you see to implementing a particular rule. And we are just received those data today, and so look forward to doing an analysis use your qualitative feedback to also help inform what else is a part of TA PD packages for the field. The site, we also have parent information sessions. We just held one this past Monday. We had a morning and an evening session where we just talked about an overview of the rule changes. And those slides that were presented to parents should be up on the website probably next week. They just need another, an accessibility check, and those slides will be presented as well. We also know that the model procedures that were released, we know that districts are looking at these model procedures. They were released as a PDF as well as a fillable Word doc, so they could be tailored to meet the needs of districts. And I know that it is taking some time, and I encourage you to reach out to the special education monitoring team and/or Tristan McNamara, who is the special education programs monitoring manager. And yeah, just reach out if you have questions. We know that school boards are taking some time to review the procedures. Districts are making decisions about whether to adopt the model procedures outright or to use the model procedures as a tool to cross-check what's contained in their own procedures. Some folks are keeping their procedures and they're taking some content from the model procedures that we shared to develop areas within their own procedures that maybe did not meet some of the basic rights under the IDEA, or we might have used language that the district prefers to utilize or to replace with what they currently have. So this is a big deal, and the model procedures were done in response to many districts over the summer who are asking for samples of what does a procedure look like, and instead of doing bit by bit at a time or a sample here or there, I had asked, it was a community it was a regional community that did the ask. And I said, would it be helpful to just release a set of model procedures of what they would look like? And there was agreement that was something that would be helpful. And I understand we're working through what this looks like for your districts, and we're willing to listen. We want this to be useful. We want this to be helpful. We do not want this to be a burden, and it was created to hopefully reduce the burden in some way from our districts to have to create an entire set of procedures if they had not created them earlier. Special education policies and procedures and practices. It's been a part of the it's been a part of the LEAP document that is signed by superintendents and board chairs as a condition for receiving IDEA funds. So when we recognized that this was an issue through our monitoring system, when monitoring decided for this cycle of monitoring to do a review of special ed procedures and practices and policy to validate the assurance that districts sign off on. We recognized that this was problematic and that some districts did not have them or did not feel that their procedures were in the position to be submitted for monitoring. We had some folks that just uploaded the special education rules, just the rules themselves, so not necessarily a proceduralized view of special education law, but just the rules themselves. So Again, there was nothing but good intentions behind trying to do this, and I know we have some tweaking to do to have everybody feel comfortable and confident that these procedures reflect the requirements, but also the work that you do within your district. So for a couple of years now, I've been talking about Vermont's general supervision system. And we are required under the IDEA to have a full system for special education. This involves 8 components that should not be in silos, that should be interconnected puzzle pieces, informing each other, reinforcing each other. These areas include things like the state performance plan, so the SPP, monitoring activities, technical assistance and professional development, fiscal, dispute resolution, policies and procedures, effective data, improvement improvement activities, corrections, sanctions, like all of those pieces need to be performing as a system and not in isolation. We have released a manual on our website. It's on the General Supervision and Monitoring System webpage, on the special ed webpage, and it's the story. It is the narrative. It spells everything out, what these puzzle pieces are and how they operate in Vermont. It also includes, as part of our the work we're required to do around identification of noncompliance and ensuring timely correction. It spells it out across those different puzzle pieces, what the authority is, how we do it, why we do it. It's really quite comprehensive in how we have this system working for Vermont. So that has been released. It's on the website. It's a light read. I think it's only 30 pages. But it's just something that to have to understand if you're preparing something for your board, if you're preparing something for parents, parent organizations that are working to understand the system. It spells it out. There's also a preliminary look at the calendar of events that happen as part of the system. As you'll see in the slide coming ahead, we are forecasting this spring to get out just a really quick and dirty, step by step, what is due when, across these areas you're responsible for. What can I expect in January? What can I expect in February? So that was another ask this past summer. It's just to get me just something for my desktop, something to put on the bulletin board, just something. So those dates are already rolled out in this general supervision system manual, and our monitoring folks are working hard to have something that's user friendly and attractive and across the board explains what is due and when. State systemic improvement report is complete and will be posted soon. You'll be hearing from our Betty Roy in upcoming months about recruiting folks to consider becoming an ESSIP school site and take advantage of instructional coaches and systems coaches that will inform elementary programs. They do a lot of work with Vermont MTSS and tiered interventions, evidence-based interventions, and we are hopeful that this is something that people take advantage of. It's a really strong model, and the data are showing that it's leading to improvements from school sites that are a part of ESSIP. So for more information, you can look at the ESSIP report and check in with Betty Roy. Well, we started a weekly director's check-in during the pandemic. We moved to bi-weekly, and to the greatest extent possible, we're just going to continue those directors check-in calls. It's very powerful when directors take their precious time and frame some questions or problems of practice and send them in advance. And I'm able to put some thought behind, getting answers or getting resources to those questions. I'm also able to reach out to other agency staff that might be, able to help provide you with the information that you need. I know that that's incredibly difficult, but for you to take the time to put what's on your mind, but it's there for you, and the hope is that we can be really working through some problem solving, really working with through a networking opportunity to share who's doing what. These are informal. It's called informal TA, and we do not record these sessions. And the reason, of course, is so that there is a safe space for folks to be able to air what some of their concerns are. And it allows us to have also an informal data source that we can take back and identify if the situation or the problems emerging are like, that there is enough weight behind them that guidance documents might be necessary, or looking at allocation of IDEA funds at the SEA level might be necessary. So it's not just a hangout session. We want it to be something that's helpful, and if it's not, I trust that you'll let me know. But for now, we're going to continue to do these at least through the summer, and then we'll revisit for the start of the school year. Case study lunch club. We're a small but mighty group. We look at some cases. I pull cases from around states around Vermont, typically within the past year. So some of them are COVID and pandemic related. Some of them are bizarre, and it's an opportunity to go, what? And we come to these as in a spirit of, like, what would you do in this situation? We go through the findings of fact and pause and say, what would you do in this? And we ask questions about it, and then we find out how things have been resolved and reflect on that. And it also sometimes gives us a moment to say, oh my goodness, we don't have to deal with that in our particular state in that way. Or what would we do if this was a particular case that emerged? So that is totally optional. Last Monday of the month, we just have lunch together. We literally eat lunch together. We do. So that's what you can expect. We are continuing with the IDEA grant approvals. I know I got a slew in this week, which I have to get to. So those are ongoing. I will continue to say the grant writing you did in particular with ARP, those of you from districts, the supplemental IDEA grants were just stellar, just stellar. The creative and innovative thinking and use of funds is was just phenomenal, and allowable costs. And what I learned from the experience is that we need to do some more guidance about requesting equipment, about requesting construction, about itemizing supplies over 5,000. This is just over the top of my head, because the regular IDA grants didn't always have that allocation that you were planning for. So so you can expect just in the coming weeks a supplemental webinar that addresses these things. And I do want to remind, especially if you are new or you have new directors coming on board, on our recent guidance news webpage on the special education website, there is a webinar that is IDEA Subgrant Application 101 that goes through the essentials of writing a work plan. What is MOE? What is CEIS and CEIS, and all the other acronyms that come with fiscal. But we'll look to do a supplemental portion to be able to clarify some of those exciting things that came through and continue to come through this past year. Our special education team, we continue to do data quarterly meetings. We are looking at how our SPP APR indicators map on specifically to student achievement and addressing the success gap, as well as how the indicators are informing each other, you know, how graduation is impacted by evaluation timelines, how, you know, achievement data relates to dropout rates. So we are also getting more fluent into how all of those indicators intersect instead of looking them at one by one on a one-by-one basis. All right, I'll speed it up a little bit here. Not much time. Common Calendar coming. Forms revisions are underway. So within 6 months, we are trying to update them in response to feedback that we've received about how to streamline them better for you. Try to just update them to reflect any rule changes and just freshen them up in general. So we've been looking at them with fresh eyes. We do technical assistance support for indicators and for the monitoring work. Thank you for those who are engaged with our staff and looking at making programmatic improvements. As I mentioned already, we have a much stronger collaboration as a special ed team with our folks with early MTSS and Vermont MTSS. That's exciting. FBA training has been revised from 2 full days in person to 3 partial days virtually. There will be an updated announcement if that hasn't gone out already. These were Tracy Harris mentioned that one. And also she said a TCI full and refresher training being offered in March. And a reminder for saving the date for the best Vermont MTSS Summer Institute. Daily TA calls and emails, IDEA Part B, so our big state grant is underway. It should be posted publicly for comment March 14th. It'll be up for 60 days. We do ask that people take a look at how we are taking what is allocated for the state agency from IDEA, how we are allocating those. It's very clear the type of buckets that are allowable by the federal government. And we have justification of how we have made decisions why a certain amount should be in a certain bucket, but we always want to hear your voice about why do you have so little in this bucket? Or, hey, this bucket's allowable. Why aren't we doing anything in this bucket? And those buckets are clear. Those buckets include things like personnel, qualified workforce, assistive technology. There's a lot of things that you know, we could benefit from hearing what your needs are and getting your feedback on funding considerations we can do. So I'll be reaching out to different organizations and groups over the coming weeks, just to make sure they see where everything is. And I'm on hand to be able to explain it to you, provide a itemized spreadsheet, you know, removing all personally identifiable information, whatever you need to help inform us on getting this grant right for the state. Work on critical shortage area. We have had a few surveys this year and a needs assessment that was conducted by PIRE, Pacific Institute of Research and Evaluation. That was our external evaluator. That's we've been to help us understand why people are leaving the field, why people are thinking about leaving the field. We got some rich, powerful qualitative and quantitative data from those, and are being able to use this with different groups within the agency of ed who are working on shortage area, and also being able to share with our CEDAR group, which is CEDAR is another state task force that we have. CEDAR is another national TA provider around teacher preparation and personnel qualification, we are using these data. These data do not live in a file cabinet. These data, which came from practitioners and administrators, are helping us prioritize and make decisions. And the mentoring was, one of the things that emerged as a particular approach that can help with retention. And it came up in our survey data, as well as what we know from the literature on mentoring new special educators. We've been focused on mentoring the mentor. And as part of using Title II funds, we spent that on creating drafting a model, getting input from a national mentor advisory panel, the MAP, which also includes some state experts as well. And these data have been powerful. We're now looking at being able to pilot a state-sponsored model where districts can apply for state funds to either design their own model or to enhance what they currently have, taking into consideration some of the standards that the state has put in place, in response to receiving funds to be able to do this. So more information is coming up shortly. We are looking to pilot this mentoring model, which would consist of some paid mentor training over the summer for a short period. And those mentors would be engaged in a network together throughout the year. But in response, there would be grant funds available to districts to be able to use for their own mentoring model. And there are many allowable opportunities with those dollars, whether it's substitute pay or stipends or curriculum and materials. So that's what we're calling Project One. Much more to come. 30% from the needs assessment study that Pyre did, 30% of LEAs, and there were over, I think there was 35 districts that participated. 30% said they were interested in being part of the pilot project. So we would be reaching out now, like this month, to see if there's interest in participating in some paid training with some top-notch expert facilitators, and being able to use those dollars to enhance your mentor model with some state support and state guidance. Project Two, I'll mention real quickly, that has to do with mentoring that we've been doing with professional special ed teachers who have been mentoring those on provisional special ed licenses. And so we are looking at ways to enhance that opportunity for those mentors, as we are 3/4 of the way done with using Title II dollars to fund that. And so we expect that we'll be doing this again next year, since those on provisional licenses have a 2-year expectation to be serving with a mentor. So that's Project One and Project Two. I am currently looking for 2 federal funding opportunities to do as Sienna, who's our project coordinator, Sienna Tuanini, we're looking at the Ferrari version of it, versus the, Subaru version versus the Datsun model. Like, what can we afford? We want Vermont to get the best, so we're looking for funding outside of Title II to be able to support that. But, we want it to be a state-sponsored, so there's a collaborative relationship rather than a top-down approach. And it was your data and your input that veered us toward that decision. Monitoring activities. So next cycle is March 15th. We already talked about the procedures. We have prepared an updated guide to monitoring submissions through our SharePoint system to help support the field with common questions regarding SharePoint access and usage, which is coming soon. I already talked about the paperwork burden reduction survey, which gave us great feedback on areas to improve on. Cyclic or selective monitoring, the March 15th submission deadline is approaching. So many of you have submitted already. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we continue to discuss what on-site visit look like and whether or not to take advantage of the virtual infrastructure that we have for future site visits, or if we're going to be in person. So we're weighing out that as we speak. And these are some just ongoing things from the last time that I reported out, is our ongoing partnerships with national TA providers and looking for all the resources we can bring. That includes answers to your questions and concerns regarding the programmatic rule changes. We have connections to experts across the country that specialize in those areas that are fully invested in working with Vermont. Should Vermont decide that it needs some some credible experts in these areas to help with implementation. So we are paraprofessional virtual trainings keep going. Already talked about preparing for the OSEP site visit. Our frequent engagement with the special education advisory panel. Agendas and meeting links are available on its own special ed advisory panel website that's on our special education page. There is the opportunity for public comment at each of these sessions, and we cover topics about unmet needs of the state with respect to students of disabilities, and everybody is invited. They're virtual for the foreseeable future. Just mentioning, we do have special ed team representation as part of independent school teams and are part of the approval process. SPP APR improvement activities, ongoing transition and indicator 13 trainings. The LRE, least restrictive environment work group is underway, and Anna Kolbach is your contact about getting involved as we look at indicator 5 and indicator 6 with early childhood special ed as well in least restrictive environment. I mentioned ESSA as a resource to you. We're highlighting that indicator 8, which you should have all received your individual reports if you are a district on your parent survey. This 70% of parents are responding positively about their involvement. We are a resource about interpreting and using your data, or discussing ways that we can increase our response rate. Our response rate is not where we want it to be, and we know that to make reliable and valid decisions given this data set, we need a full court press on increasing those numbers and diversifying the representativeness of who is responding. And by that, I mean like across disability categories. There are some parents of children in particular categories that did not respond, and we need to look at ways that we have we have more representative voice that gives us all the information about parent participation and how they feel as parent partners. Some of you have been working with our vendor that we have in place to develop an MTSS evaluation manual and training. I've heard some real positive feedback from those that have engaged with this group already towards this product and training that they will be developing specifically around adverse effect and SLD. And in the coming weeks, we're going to look for ways to reach out regionally to make sure that everybody's had a chance to respond to prompts and to give their own feedback. So we have a product that is that we feel confident has been well informed by a majority of districts who are engaged in this work. Few more secondary, post-secondary transition. There were four transition training services have been completed, and there are recordings available on the website. Summary performance trainings have been completed. A one-page summary performance self-review for educators was created. And many LEA have been checking in on their Indicator 13 data. We are very grateful for your outreach, and we'll continue to work with NTAC, who's our national TA provider, on other ways to improve performance. And with that said, a majority of districts, although they might not be 100% compliant, it's important to note they are so very, very close. We're talking in the 80 and 90% range towards compliance. We're so close to being there. So please check the website for additional resources and information. This is just a quick message from our data team, and they're just noting that all districts have completed submissions for child count. There were 44 districts that were contacted during the data quality review. And so, these were some of the examples of, some were errors, some were additional checks, some were just reconciling the information. And coming up on the horizon are verification reports next month. Well, that's now March, which need to be reviewed and electronically signed. Some details from the SPP APR report that you might want to include, that I might want to include. That notes to me that the 74-page report included approximately 150 data points. These are your data points. And the AOE engaged stakeholders in setting 270 targets for the next 6 years. And so on the horizons are the local APRs, which are usually around June. Significant disproportionality identifications will happen late April with a preliminary letter, and then an actual identification letter in July for those found to have a significant disproportionality. The local special education determination, that also happens over the summer as well. And then from finance, CEIS and CCEIS collection completed, ready for EMAPS reporting in May. The service plan collection is complete. December payment and projections are complete. Special ed expense reports, SEER, July 1st through October, those were submitted. Kudos to everybody who engaged in this, and we had timely and accurate submissions. Thank you. And then for from the assessment office, so testing and reporting will resume pre-COVID expectations. And then you can sign up to receive the assessment newsletter. Here's some information on the state assessment testing window, and the alternate assessment indicators will be set up. The learner characteristics surveys for new and transferring students should have been completed by February 25th. For information about general assessment and alt assessment, with respect to students with disabilities, reach out to Linda Moreno, who has joined us, or take advantage of the help desk. And that we are also in the coming months going to be talking about bids, an RFP that's been put out for the alternate assessment, and we're currently receiving bids from vendors. Testing certification reminders here about who needs to complete the TA alternate certification course to administer the VTAA from alternate assessment, and some definitions here. Some notes about accommodations, about making sure the text-to-speech accommodations are sent to the state for entry into TIDE or approvals. TTS accommodation is set at the SEA level, allowing 2 weeks for entries to get posted in TIDE, and so there's specific information by grade level, and some information about speech to text. And these slides, again, are going to be made available up on our website, so you can easily click in the links. But again, reach out to Linda with additional conversation. So there she is. That's her contact information, and a note about medical exemptions following the guidelines. Okay. No COVID non-participation codes in 2022. That was another announcement as well. Okay, and we've already talked about rule changes. Just a reminder that if you have any accolades or praises you want to sing about your staff or other administrators, please send them to Sabina. We would love to publish them in our nuggets. And as always, for resources, our website, our PD forms, our special ed TA that's available to parents, families, districts, interested parties from the community. And regional representatives, we again are honored to be at the table for your regional meetings. It's really a privilege to be there. Please reach out to them also as a point of contact. And then I'll end with any requests for data that you have that we don't have readily available, such as like our indicator 11 or 13 monitoring data. If you need more data, such as from the child find forms, or if you're doing action research or working with somebody who is engaged in research that involves an institutional review board, these are the two links to go to for those data requests. And I appreciate your kind attention. I know we're a few minutes over. I apologize, but please reach out with any questions regarding the dissemination of the information today. And I love giving you updates, so much to report. And my staff and I continue to just thank you and just hold you in just the highest regard and esteem for all the service that you provide for kids and families. And please continue the great works, and let's keep our collaboration alive and engaged and as partners in this together. Thank you for your time and attention, and have an excellent weekend. Thanks, everybody. Dang.